We are, in fact, in the northernmost part of Israel. This is the northernmost part of Israel. And you see the mountain over here. We're at the foot of Mount Hermon, which happens to be the tallest mountain around, over 9,000 feet above sea level. Now, the water that you see down here is the water of a brook called Banyas, and it happens to be one of the three tributaries of the Jordan River. So we're actually looking at the headwaters of that river. Now, thousands of years ago, okay, already in the 3rd century BC, that's several centuries prior to the birth of Christ, the first city was established here. Now, why did the ancient Greeks build their city here? Because of the greenery and especially the water. Okay? They realized that was a good location, and they named their first city Panias, okay? Named after Pan, the Greek god Pan, or Faun. We would probably refer to him as Faun. And in Greek mythology, this little creature is described as the god of the shepherds, the god of the goats, and the god of forests and water fountains. That's why he was being worshipped here. Okay. However, when you think about the nature of that little creature, we would probably call him the god of lust. Okay, because in Greek mythology, he is described as this very devious little creature, very charming at first, but ultimately very sinister intentions in mind. And so throughout Greek mythology, it's described as this little guy that is chasing the nymphs, you know, around the forests and ultimately bring about their destruction. And oftentimes he would do that by playing beautiful music, right? Using his pan flute. The pan flute derives from the word for pan, or the name of Pan. By the way, there are a few more words in English deriving from that name. Pandemonium, for example, or panic, right? And so he would go into these rages, you know, where he would be starting, you know, chasing the nymphs around. And this half-man, half-goat creature was the main god, the patron god of this ancient city. Now, it was already the Greeks who built the first temple up there. The Greeks, of course, were pagan. They believed in a variety of different deities, both female goddesses as well as male gods. And they actually believed that the gods resided in a particular place. And they called that place, the home of the gods, so to speak, the Acropolis, the elevated, the high city. For example, the famous one in Athens, right, the Acropolis there was the Temple of Zeus, right, the primary god in Greek, in the pantheon of Greek gods. Here, they basically build their own Acropolis in a higher level, right there, okay, over a very large cave, which you're going to see in a minute. Again, we're talking about a society of pagan people. They believe in all kinds of deities, all kinds of gods and goddesses, but one other central belief in Greek mythology was to do with the gates of the underworld. Okay? What did the Greeks call? What was the name for the underworld in Greek? Hades. Okay? They believed that when a person died, he would be on the journey to the afterlife. Okay? He would have to go through a lot of different trials and tests during that period, at that time. Only those virtues, okay, would actually eventually get to something like heaven. Okay? And they believed that the first stage in that journey to the afterlife involved the descension to a subterranean river by the name of Styx. Okay? They believed there was a ferryman that would ferry you over to the other bank of that river. And by the way, for this reason, they had a habit of inserting a coin into the mouth of the deceased or placing coins on their eyes. They would have money to pay the ferryman. Okay? The local Greek population here believed that cave over there is none other than the gates of Hades. Okay? Why do they think that was the gates of Hades? Because that river that you see down here actually came out of that cave 2,000 years ago. This is no longer the case because, of course, time, basically parts of the cave came in, preventing water from flowing out of it. But many scholars believe that if you were to look into that cave 2,000 years ago, you'd be looking at the subterranean river that was flowing out of that cave. Now this is very important. Okay, remember, for the local Greek population, speaking population, this cave over there represented the gates of Hades. Okay, the gates of hell. Right. Now, after the Greeks came the Romans. Okay, and this is basically the general time period of Jesus and the other disciples. For the local population here, it didn't really matter now that the Romans were in control. It was essentially the same culture, right? The Romans embraced Hellenism, the culture and religion of the Greeks. They improved it, modifying it sometimes, maybe sometimes changing the names, but it was the same culture, the same gods and deities. And during the Roman period, they added a few other temples over there. You can still see traces of those temples, pagan temples, over that local Acropolis over there. Now we're getting to the interesting part. Early 1st century AD, okay? This is already into the early Roman period. The local ruler here in this region at the time of Jesus was one by the name of Herod Philippi. He was one of the sons of King Herod the Great, who was a Jewish king. And during that time, he decided to change the name from Panias, the city of Pan, so to speak, to his own name, okay? And thus is the name Caesarea Philippi. Okay? He added Philippi, his own city, to distinguish this Caesarea from another Caesarea that existed already, and that was Caesarea by the sea. And Lord willing, we'll see that other Caesarea tomorrow when we head over to the Mediterranean Sea. So this is now called Caesarea Philippi. Remember, the former name was Panias. All right? Now, this, of course, brings us to a very important event that took place in this setting. And I'm going to read to you a passage. If you have your Bible here with you, you can follow along. And this is, of course, something that every single person who ever lived on the face of the earth will have to answer to eventually, whether they know it or not. And that is to do with the nature of Christ. Who is Christ? Jesus. Okay? And so I'm going to read to you Matthew chapter 16. I'll read verse 13 and following. Now remember the context of this. This is already towards the end of Jesus' Galilean ministry. Jesus is now returning essentially to the central part of Galilee by way of this northern district of Caesarea Philippi, right? And this is what happens next. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, which is this region, he was asking his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Of how he's referring to himself, the Son of Man. And they said, some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. What's the common thing among all the names that have just been mentioned? Flesh and blood. Great prophets, for sure. Flesh and blood. Okay? Now, he said to them, but who do you say that I am? So now, from the public kind of opinion, he's turning to his inner circle of disciples. Now remember, these are men who have heard sermon after sermon after sermon, teaching after teaching for months and months and months. They've witnessed miracles. They've seen everything that happened, okay? But obviously it's not clear by itself, right? So who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. By the way, the Greek text here, Christ Christos, is the anointed one, okay? The anointed one. This is, by the way, the Greek equivalent of the word Mashiach or Messiah in Hebrew, the one who's been anointed, okay? And Jesus said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who's in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter. And now we're getting to a play on words. Okay, you are Petros in Greek, little pebble. And upon this rock, Petra in Greek, huge rock, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ. Okay, by the way, this, ever since, really, became the source of center of great controversy, especially between the Roman Catholic Church, who would claim one thing, versus the Protestant world, which would claim something completely different. The Roman Catholics would argue this is it. This is the proof, right? That the church, okay, is founded on Rome. This is the rock, and Peter especially, right? He is the one to whom the keys of heaven were given. You remember yesterday when we visited Capernaum, you saw that statue, right? Of Peter holding the keys of heaven. We have all these pearly jokes, pearly gates jokes, right? Peter standing at the gates, deciding who's going in and who's not. But when you look at the text, the original text in Greek, you actually realize that's not what Jesus is saying. It's plain words. You are a little pebble, Peter. Petros, this is your name. The literal meaning of the Greek name of Peter was Petros, which is a little pebble. But upon that Petra, okay, he's not saying Peter again, he's saying Petra. Upon that huge rock, I'm going to build my church. And the question is, what is this big rock? It's not repetitive. It's not that you are Peter and upon you, Peter, I'm going to build a church. That's not what Jesus is saying according to the Greek text. He's saying something completely different. You're a little pebble, but upon that Petra, that huge mountain, okay, I'm going to build my church. What is this big church? This big rock, right? Well, some argue, and I tend to believe with them, that it's the statement. Jesus is the rock. Okay? It's not Peter. Peter was a great shepherd, no doubt. Very, very important individual, right? Instrument, right, in the hands of God. I will not deny him that. But at the end of the day, we're worshiping and following Jesus, not Peter. And I believe that this really brings us back to this original question, statement, right, as to who Jesus really is, right? This is the only really thing that will enable someone to enter the kingdom of heaven, the recognition that Jesus is more than just a great prophet, is more than just a great teacher, is more than just a great rabbi. He is the living Son of God, and no one enters into heaven other than through him, right? This is really the rock. This is the statement section. Jesus is founding his church, right, on that statement. So we can rest assured that in Jesus, right, we have salvation. It's not in Peter. It's basically in Jesus. And so much so that even the gates of Hades over there will have no power over it. And this is why it's such a joy to come here, because I always get reminded of this, right? That even the powers of hell now and death have no power over us, not because of us or Peter, but because of Jesus. Okay? Amen? Amen. Okay, so just to complete the historical account, later on, okay, centuries later, the Arabs captured the land in the 7th century. And they decided to rename this city after its original name, which was Panias. However, the Arabs have a hard time pronouncing the letter P. Okay? They oftentimes pronounce P as a B. Alright? And so instead of naming it Panias, they start calling it Banias. Banias. By the way, in the same way, they mispronounce the Greek name for Shechem, which is Neapolis, the new city, and today they call it Nablus. It's one of the cities of the West Bank, the same thing. That's why Yasser Arafat always used to talk about the Bur, Balazdin, Bibur, right? Simply because he couldn't pronounce the letter P. So this is a theme that repeats itself time and time again, and it's simply a mispronunciation of the letter P. So, Panias, Banias, or Caesarea Philippi, different names for the same place. And what we're going to do next, we're going to have some time to walk up, just follow the path here, just a few steps up. Let's set up a time frame for that. Let's just roll that to 10. Let's say something like 15, 20 minutes. No more.